In early 1941, the Third Reich stood at the zenith of its power. With most of Europe under its iron grip, Hitler's gaze turned eastward, preparing for the colossal invasion of the Soviet Union, Operation Barbarossa. But an unexpected theater of war, a sprawling desert landscape far to the south, would soon demand his attention and divert crucial resources. This is the story of how North Africa, a conflict initially dismissed as a sideshow, spiraled into a legendary campaign, all thanks to the ambitions and failures of Germany's key ally, Italy. When Mussolini's Italy officially joined the war in June 1940, it was with grand visions of a new Roman Empire dominating the Mediterranean. Germany's swift victories in France had been intoxicating, and Mussolini was eager to share in the spoils. He believed the war was all but won and that a quick, decisive strike would secure Italy's place at the victor's table. But reality, as it often does, had other plans. Italian aspirations quickly collided with the harsh truths of modern warfare, and their military machine, which looked formidable on paper, began to sputter and fail almost immediately. The string of Italian disasters began to unfold with alarming speed. In October 1940, Mussolini launched an ill-conceived invasion of Greece. Expecting a swift victory, Italian forces were instead met with fierce resistance and pushed back into Albania, turning a planned glorious conquest into a humiliating stalemate. This wasn't just a military embarrassment, it was a strategic blunder that forced Germany to divert forces to bail out their ally, ultimately delaying the invasion of the Soviet Union. But the real catastrophe for Italy was brewing in the sun-scorched sands of North Africa. In December 1940, the British and Commonwealth forces launched Operation Compass. It was intended as a limited 5-day raid against the Italian 10th Army, which had cautiously advanced into Egypt. But the operation exceeded all expectations. The Italian forces, poorly led, inadequately equipped, and lacking the will to fight, simply crumbled. The British, with their superior tactics and the formidable Matilda infantry tanks, which were virtually impervious to Italian anti-tank guns, sliced through the Italian lines. Compounding these land-based disasters was a crippling blow at sea. In November 1940, the British Royal Navy executed a daring carrier-based air raid on the Italian naval base at Using antiquated swordfish biplane torpedo bombers, they sank or heavily damaged 3 Italian battleships, shifting the balance of naval power in the Mediterranean overnight. Mussolini's dream of Mare Nostrum, or Aussee, was shattered. Within just a few months of entering the war, Italy's military reputation was in tatters. Back in Berlin, Hitler was growing increasingly frustrated. He had never been keen on a major military commitment in the Mediterranean or North Africa. His strategic focus was firmly fixed on the east, on the destruction of the Soviet Union. The desert was a distraction, a drain on resources he couldn't afford. However, the prospect of a complete Italian collapse was something he couldn't ignore. An Italian surrender would open up a southern front, exposing Germany's underbelly to Allied attack and threatening the vital Romanian oil fields. Politically and psychologically, the failure of his primary Axis partner would be a massive blow to their cause. Reluctantly, Hitler decided he had to intervene. His first move wasn't on the ground, but in the air. He ordered the transfer of Fliegerkorps X, a specialized anti-shipping air corps of the Luftwaffe, to Sicily. Their mission was twofold: to wrest control of the central Mediterranean from the Royal Navy and to neutralize the critical British island fortress of Malta. Malta was a thorn in the side of Axis supply lines to North Africa, a veritable unsinkable aircraft carrier from which British planes and submarines wreaked havoc on convoys. By bombing Malta into submission and attacking British shipping, Germany hoped to secure the sea lanes and allow reinforcements and supplies to reach the beleaguered Italians. But air power alone wouldn't be enough to stem the tide on the ground. The British advance in Operation Compass was relentless. What made the British so successful? It wasn't just about superior tanks like the Matilda. Their logistics, while stretched, were more effective than Italy's. Their troops, drawn from across the Commonwealth, were well trained and highly motivated. And critically, they had a secret weapon: intelligence. British codebreakers at Bletchley Park had cracked Italian ciphers, giving their commanders invaluable insight into Italian plans, positions, and supply situations. They often knew what the Italians were going to do before the Italian field commanders did. This intelligence advantage, combined with tactical superiority, led to one of the most one-sided victories of the war. By early February 1941, the Italian 10th Army had ceased to exist. In a stunning display of mobile warfare, British forces had advanced 800 kilometers, captured the crucial port of Tobruk, and at the Battle of Beta Farm completely encircled and destroyed the last remnants of the Italian army. They had taken over 130,000 prisoners, hundreds of tanks, and over 1,000 artillery pieces, all at the cost of fewer than 2,000 of their own casualties. It was an unmitigated disaster for the Axis and a spectacular victory for the Allies. North Africa was on the verge of being lost entirely. Faced with this complete collapse, Hitler knew air support was no longer sufficient. He had to send ground troops. He authorized the creation of a new expeditionary force, initially codenamed Operation Sunflower. The first unit to be formed was the 5th Light Division, a mobile formation composed of reconnaissance, anti-tank, and panzer battalions. This would soon be followed by a full-fledged panzer division, the 15th, which would later be redesignated as the 21st Panzer Division. Together, these units would form the legendary Deutsches Afrika Korps or German Afrika Korps. But a corps, no matter how well equipped, is only as good as its commander. And for this critical mission, Hitler chose a man who had distinguished himself during the invasion of France with his audacity and leadership of the 7th Panzer Division. Rommel was known for his hands-on approach, his knack for improvisation, and his incredible speed on the battlefield. He was the perfect commander for the kind of fluid, mobile warfare that the desert demanded. When Rommel arrived in Tripoli in February 1941, the situation looked grim. The Italian forces were demoralized, and the British seemed unstoppable. But Rommel's arrival marked a turning point. He wasn't there just to defend, he was there to attack. Disregarding orders to remain on the defensive and wait for his full force to assemble, Rommel immediately began probing the British lines. Using deception and rapid movement to create the illusion of a much larger force, the hunter had just become the hunted. The character of the Desert War was about to change dramatically, setting the stage for a 2-year struggle of attack and counter-attack of brilliant maneuvers and bitter attrition between two of the war's most famous commanders, Rommel and his British counterparts. The legend of the Desert Fox was about to be born. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the early stages of the North African campaign, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next video, where we'll cover Rommel's first electrifying offensive. See you next time.